Yes. We just settle down, please. Thank you. And welcome to the committee meeting of the Heritage and Townscape Committee of Sandwich Town Council, meeting on the 11th of March 2024. And thank you. And the first item one, is Chair's opening remarks. And I only have one, well, possibly two opening remarks. The first is that I hope that we've all noticed with admiration, congratulation and thanks the planting of a new hedge in Cowley's Meadow. And I think we should be particularly grateful to the volunteer tree warden, Nikki Warden, and her team of tree champions. Unfortunately, I myself wasn't able to go and help with the planting, but I think one or two of you were there. And I think this is a splendid new aspect of the town, and I hope that we'll continue with a tree planting plan, which the tree warden will be, or at least council manager on behalf of the tree warden will be bringing, I hope, to a meeting of this committee in the near future, so we can discuss other plans for tree planting. The second thing I wanted to say was apologies for, I think I did send you all an apology for not inviting you to contribute to the agenda. I'm afraid I was up to my ears in all sorts of things. The town clerk was up to her ears in all sorts of things, and it just slipped off my list, my to-do list. But I do intend, and I think this is particularly with regard to the co-opted members of the committee, I do intend to invite you to suggest items for the agenda about a week ahead of the agenda setting for the next meeting, because I think that's a good way for members of the committee to feel engaged with the business of the committee, and I would like to start that habit, as it were. So that's the end of my opening remarks. Item 2, apologies for absence received.
We've just had apologies from Councillor Mary due to work commitments.
Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda. Has anybody got any pecuniary interest? No. Item 4, minutes of the Heritage and Townscape Committee, and these are the minutes of the last meeting that was held by this committee on January the 8th, 2024, and they are attachment 1. So if you've got comments, could you just wait until, because I find it actually quite difficult to get to where I want to be on this new system. Okay, I've got those minutes up. Has everybody else got them?
Yeah.
Good. No? Is that because they don't appear?
They don't appear online.
These are the attachments. All attachments.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. That's the one.
Is it?
Yes.
Ignore me.
No, I don't think to. So, has anybody got comments on these minutes? Councillor Black, Councillor
Sugar
Sugar
first.
Okay.
Thank you. I promise I'll be happier as the meeting goes on, but I have got one mode. Although I wasn't at the last meeting, I suppose what I'm disappointed about is that this meeting doesn't really bring the outstanding actions to review. I did, because the last meeting was cancelled, it gave us sort of a 2-month window to look at them, and I did propose to all the group that maybe we had an opportunity to refresh them and bring an updated action log to this meeting, but it hasn't happened. And I just really wanted to say that from my perspective, and Councillor Black as well, we took an exercise for another reason to look through previous minutes and associated papers. And the absence of the outcomes of actions was impacted what we were doing. So I think we can do better as a group. And the other thing is that we have a number of actions that some old, some new, some have been closed, some have been superseded, and that's all brilliant. That's how action review logs should be reviewed. But I really don't know where we are against 15, 20 or so actions for this committee. And it would be really helpful if for the next meeting we could actually go through them, close off those that we think are no longer important, and leave the rump that we think we still need to manage. So it's just a plea from me in terms of action, because if not, we give up time to come to these meetings, and we talk about subjects and say they're really important, here's an action we need to take away and do, and then we don't get done.
Well,
so that's just my personal
yes,
perspective.
if I could comment, I mean, I do always go over the previous minutes with the town clerk when we are deciding on the agenda. So I accept what you're saying, that we haven't published an action log, and we don't do that as formally as the town council now does at its meeting, and I think finance and general purposes does. But it's simply, that is the way I prefer to do it. But if the committee feels strongly that you would like an action log at the beginning of every meeting and a record kept, I'm perfectly happy to do it that way. Yes, Councillor. Mrs. Jordan, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I think it would be a useful idea, because I've been pressing, dealing with Dover District Council over some funding, and one of these areas is with respect to the additional street furniture and some planters that we're supposed to have on the forecourt if there was money available from the that left over from the project. And I actually couldn't find it. I know I'd seen it, but it was actually back in, I think, November's minutes, and when I found it, but I haven't actually seen the outcome of that. And now I've made inquiries with TDC, and they're coming back to me and saying, well, what is your outcome? Because this was back with the town council, so I put my foot in it, I'm sorry. But, you know, I think I was all about planters. If we couldn't afford to buy them because we haven't got any money left, then could we get some funding to put them there ourselves? Obviously we'd have to come back to Sandwich Town Council, but then they said, well, have you got money left in the budget? I don't know, because there's all the issues around.
I would just say, I mean, I do raise this issue with the town clerk at every meeting that we have when we set the agenda, and I raised it again, and she said that she hadn't heard anything from DDC. So, you know, it's so these things are discussed. But if you would, between myself and the town clerk, but if you would prefer it to be formalised in that way, I'm perfectly happy to do that.
I certainly would, and if necessary, put a motion forward that we do formalise it.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Okay, so would you all like to vote? Those in favour of Councillor Black's motion, which is seconded by Councillor Shuker, that we have a formal action log which we go through at every meeting. And I'm abstaining. Okay.
And the offer I've got, sorry, Councillor Anderson, the offer I've got is I am maintaining my own action log. I've previously shared it with the town clerk. I'm still updating it every month.
Okay.
I will share the latest version. So it's not about starting something from scratch.
No. Okay, that's fine. Councillor Black, did you want to?
Yes, I hope I'm mistaken. So there's something missing from the minutes after Chair's remarks and apologies. I do hope it's a mistake, because I actually raised something very important and it seems not to be on the minutes.
What was that?
I raised a formal objection, and the town clerk replied that that had been noted. And I've double checked the video. I can tell you precisely what time it was agreed by the town clerk, but it has not appeared on the minutes, and I think that is extremely worrying.
I mean, as the clerk isn't here today, she's on manual leave, I can take this back and raise it with her directly when she returns and then get back to you.
Well, I would like, please, you to note that I raised a formal objection 8.5 minutes into the meeting about some of the proposals in section by the chair's suggestions, and I would really like that confirmed to me personally in writing that this will be included in the minutes, because I've got the video evidence, and I wasn't the only person who was discussing this. And I'm very disappointed, in fact stronger than that, that it is not included.
Okay, I think that was you were strongly objecting to my suggestion that people should be invited, members of the committee should be invited to send items for the agenda, is that right?
No, I was objecting to the whole process of, let me get my notes please, matters arising, yes. You don't want, you said you didn't want to avoid, you wanted to avoid raising issues not on the agenda. You'd invite committee members to suggest an agenda item, a maximum of 6 per annum. And I said, well, if we're doing that, that sounds like something that perhaps standing orders might look at. And the discussion continued, and I said, well, I'm raising a formal objection. Councillor Franklin said, well, what are you objecting to? And I replied exactly what I was objecting to. So please, if someone can have a look at the video, they'll find exactly what I was objecting to, and it should be in the minutes, because the clerk did note that this was at 8 minutes 54 seconds to be precise.
Okay, as I look
Could we defer accepting these minutes until the next meeting when the amendments have been made?
That would be happy. I'll be happy with that, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so somebody seconding, Councillor, Mr. Heaven, would you?
It's about another item on the
Okay,
minutes.
can we just take this? Can we?
Defer a bit.
Yes, well, if you would like to say what your
Yeah,
problem is, Mr. Heaven, and then we can come back to the minutes.
yeah. There's an item on the last minutes concerning approaches to DDC about enforcement with regard to the site at Fellowship Walk to tidy it up. And I was wondering, one, has there been a response from DDC? Do they intend to tidy it up? And two, on looking at the site now, and it does look a mess, ironically, though they had scraped off every scrap of habitat that existed on that site, it's now all grown back. And ironically, we advise people about putting a log pile in your wildlife garden to help the wildlife. And they've got some beautiful log piles. So, is it possible that if Sandwich Town Council were to approach Dover District Council about enforcing a tidying operation, you could suggest, well, could you leave some of the brambles towards the back, and could you leave the log piles?
Yes, thank you. I think, I mean, again, this was something that I talked about with the town clerk as to whether there had been any news about what's happening with managing that land. And she said, we met, which is now about a fortnight ago, so there may have been something, that she hadn't had an update, but I don't know whether councillor.
Yes, so the last update, so it's in the hands of the enforcement team. They are liaising with the landowner. He has gone beyond the deadline for taking action or coming forward with a plan for action. So where DDC are currently is they are considering, that's the word, considering a section 215 notice, which is a compulsion to do work. The issue I would say in terms of the points you make are really valid, but it will be the landowner's responsibility to do whatever they deem necessary. So it won't be a DDC can obviously have a conversation, but ultimately the landowner will remedy it in their own way.
If it's
Or not.
Or not, yeah. Thank you.
Any other items on the minutes, or we need to vote on whether we wish to defer the minutes? Have we haven't voted on that?
No, so
No.
councillor Franklin
No.
proposed, but I haven't heard a
Yeah, I'll
second.
second that.
Okay, so please vote in favour
Of deferring.
Yes.
of
Yes.
deferring.
Yeah.
Yes,
All in agreement, thank you.
okay. Item 5 is public participation. A 20-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of the business on the agenda. Have we had any? No. Thank you. Item 6, and again I'm going to allow people to find these attachments if they can, is a report
Yes.
from myself about the operation of the level crossings. I think probably we all noticed that on February the 20th, all 3 level crossings in Sandwich, that's Ash Road, New Street and Woodensborough Road, failed at the same time, at about 11:30. And as I've said in the report, the gates of the Ash Road and Woodensborough Road crossings remained in a closed position for approximately 5 hours, although the New Street crossing was opened after about 3 hours. As a result, the movement of the vehicular traffic into and within Sandwich was brought to a halt, and trains were delayed for about 3 hours. In effect, Sandwich was gridlocked for much of the day, and journeys both on road and rail were very seriously and adversely impacted. And I should have added that if there had been, if somebody had become very unwell and needed an ambulance, or if there had been a fire, there would have been no access at all. It was impossible. And I've suggested that the council needs to know from Network Rail and from South Eastern Trains what steps are being taken to prevent this happening again, and what the plan B is should it recur. And I've suggested in the recommendations that the committee request the town clerk write to Network Rail and South Eastern Trains to inquire as to what caused this serious incident, what steps are being taken to prevent it happening again, and what plans are in process to ameliorate the situation. For example, the possibility of manual operation of the gates should it happen again. So, Councillor Carter and Councillor Schuster.
Oh yeah, very briefly. South Eastern Trains only deal with the rolling stock and the station staff. The actual gates that come down are the responsibility of Network Rail Limited. So could we just write to Network Rail,
Yes.
please, to get an answer? Thank you.
So,
Yes, Councillor Schuster.
yeah, and I think that's a really good segue to what I was going to suggest. So I think the principle is exactly right. We do need to seek some assurances around this, but I was going to propose, rather than putting more into the bucket of the town clerk, is I would want to propose that Councillor Black leads on this, because he's the right person in terms of knowledge and experience around the railway network. Now, if we feel it has to go via the town clerk, then that's fine. Councillor Black can do it for the town clerk, but ultimately it's a representative of the town council, and I'd much prefer Councillor Black, and it alleviates another piece of work for the town clerk.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I'd like to second that.
Yes, but can we just be clear?
Sorry, I haven't asked Councillor Black. Oh, sorry.
I do
He's a very
think,
affable guy.
could I just suggest that perhaps I do think that a letter from the town clerk has the imprimatur of the town council, which is where I think, we should exert our strength in that sense, but that Councillor Black might be willing to draft such a letter.
I would certainly be very willing to help with the town clerk to get the technical wording right and also ask the right questions. I think couple of, I mean, as it happened, I didn't see this until Thursday evening, and unfortunately I met up with the level crossing manager on Thursday morning at Age Concern and in the library.
Yes, you did.
I informally know exactly what happened, but as we're raising it formally, I really can't go into the detail. I'm happy to do so. The only other addition I would suggest is some method for them to communicate with the town, because we're almost unique in only having one road left if all of the crossings go, because the one going towards Richborough also failed. So you were left with going across the bridge. And actually Councillor Chandler got caught up in all of this as well. So she was bending my ear as well. I'm happy to do that, but asking when this happens, is there a way you can quickly communicate with the town and give us some indication of likely timescales? And as you say, whether there's any possibility of getting some people to, the technical term is hand crank them, so you can get, the trouble is there are very good operational reasons why you have to keep the barriers down, because you can still send a train through at reduced speed just to check out what's happening. So we can ask the questions in a semi-technical manner, but I'm happy that it comes from the town clerk. I agree with you, the imprimatur is important that it comes from it. Happy to do that.
Yes. Was Councillor Rick?
No, it was
Oh,
Councillor
my question was answered.
Okay,
Not
okay.
extra press out.
Councillor Franklin.
Well, we have a Kent County Council highways depot in Sandwich. Would it be possible to contact them, see if they can get some emergency road signs up? Because a lot of people shortcut through from Ramsgate to Deal, you know. So if they put some signs up by the bypass and say, road blocked, and that's a lot of people just coming into the town and causing it, then having to go all the way around and back out again. It'd be nice if they, you know, have it all at the same time, the rail track, and then Kent County Council are notified immediately, and they can send a van out and put the appropriate signs up at the Ramsgate Road.
Okay, so
They
we've
haven't
got
got rid of
a
that.
sort of two sets of recommendations. One is that Councillor Black drafts a letter which will go to the, which will be on, which the town clerk will then send to Network Rail.
I would prefer to actually work
Okay, okay.
if that's all right.
Yes, that Councillor Black works with the town clerk on developing questions to Network Rail as to the cause of the accident and the incident, and what steps are being taken to prevent it happening again, and what plans are in place to ameliorate the situation. So that's one set of recommendations. And then the second set is that the town clerk also writes to Kent County Council about the possibility, should this happen, of them putting out very promptly signs saying at the roundabout, saying that traffic should find some other
Yeah, detour,
yes, and perhaps a notice on social media,
Oh, yes.
which the town council could do using its page. Yeah,
Um,
Mrs. George.
There is an issue even if they don't all close, because if it's certain crossings that are shut, like the one at Moat, then it means that the cart lorry can't come in, and if we have a road driver, then that road driver won't know that he can't come in any other way. He then can't, the size of those lorries, he then cannot turn. So it's not, I think it's quite a few people that need to know it's this crossing or it's these crossings, and this is the way around it, because otherwise we're going to have lorries and trucks and things stuck in the middle of town, as we did last Thursday for a different reason. But you know, it's really worrying, and the amount of people, if you look at social media, who lost sort of appointments and all sorts of things in
Children left
going
at
into
school.
the town. Yes.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
disaster.
I don't know how you do this, but I know the co-op, once upon a time, the manager at the co-op, who is now back, Paul, he used to be able to contact the driver of the vehicle if there was an incident, to give them directions on how to come in or out of the town.
It may be that you have a sort of a cascade effect, that person A has to know about it, and as we say, you talk about Network Rail, they maybe have to tell 3 or 4 others, and those 3 or 4 others will have to tell, each tell 3 people, and do a cascade like that.
Yeah.
That's another, but I've got a note of that as well as the point about
Yeah.
KCC depot.
Yeah, 'cause I was going to say, when that happened before, luckily, well, not luckily, there was a lot of traffic from Woodford going around St Bart's, and that co-op lorry did come down. It's a lady driver, and she was fantastic. She reversed all the way from Woodford crossing, all the way back up to St Bart's,
Wow.
luckily, and then she went round St Bart's, so she must have gone to deal and come
Yeah.
back later. But they need the KCC to get out and put signs out. don't
Yeah,
they?
yeah.
On the road.
And if we can tell customers, some major customers like the co-op, get hold of your drivers, you're expecting delivery, warn them.
Mm,
We can do something like that.
yeah.
It'll never be perfect, there will always be glitches.
Mm.
Yes, Councillor Tomlins?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
just another suggestion with the Deal Road. I think it's the ancient highway, isn't it? The private road.
Yeah.
But they should. There must be some system that they're made aware so that it can let traffic divert, because obviously that's a toll road.
It's a good
Yeah,
idea.
that's a
good
idea.
It's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Put it all down there.
But if they were coming, if they're heading to Deal, they're already.
I wouldn't like driving Arctic down there.
If
Or
some
Big
people
Bang.
are, yeah,
Fully
they're coming over the
potholes
bridge
as well.
and they,
Yes. Councillor Shuker and then.
I'm just going sorry, I'm just being facetious, but before we add any more into the mix, can we agree against Councillor Black doing this?
Yeah.
Another fine mess you've got into.
Okay, so, as I understand it, Councillor Black, you've taken notes of all the points made.
Hopefully, yes.
So the recommendation that I'd like you to vote on is that Councillor Black works with the town clerk to develop a set of questions to Network Rail and suggestions to both KCC and to the co-op or local.
I think local
Key
businesses,
key
key local
stakeholders.
stakeholders might be.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
I'll
And to ask Network Rail particularly what steps they're taking to prevent it happening again, or put in place steps that will ameliorate the situation. Okay, would anybody like to, have you got all that?
Yes, that's
Sorry.
What's the recording? I'll second it, yeah.
Okay, so would you like to vote in favour of that?
Can I abstain? No, I'll vote. I'll vote.
Okay, so we're now moving on to item 7, and I'll give everybody an opportunity to try and find the relevant report, which is attachment 3.
That's the ramp ends.
Yes. So there's a report from myself and also a letter which was sent in July by the director or a director of the Ainsley Court Residence Company. This is to consider a proposal to construct a ramp from the quay path through to the courtyard of Ainsley Court. The Disability Access Strategy Working Group, which I was chairing at that time when it was meeting regularly in 2022, opened discussions with the directors of the Ainsley Court Residence Company Limited to consider the building of a ramp from the quay path through the Ainsley Court courtyard. Such a ramp would form part of an accessible route from the disabled parking spaces on the quay into the centre of Sandwich. The directors of the Ainsley Court Residence Company agreed in principle to this ramp, subject to certain design conditions, and their letter of July the 18th, 2022 is attached to this report. There's a small budget of $2,500 for 2024-5 available, and there may be other funding sources if the cost of this project exceeds the budget amount. And this committee is now asked to take this proposal forward. The recommendations from my report are that the town clerk seek tenders from local building firms that could both design and build the desired ramp. And secondly, that once the tenders are in, the committee consider them and make recommendations to the council about the preferred builder, estimated cost and funding sources. So has anybody got any comments like that?
Can I just ask
Councillor Black.
the question, This is at the back of the flats, and where there's a walkway that
Yeah.
comes out eventually on Pillory Lane, is the last bit of it.
Well, no, Pillory Lane isn't actually, it's
There's a gate, sorry, Pillory Gate,
Ives
it's a gate, a garden, yes, it's a gate,
Yeah.
my mistake. And whose land is that? That's the first question. I'm not sure, and if it's not STC land, is it KCC, is it DDC, or is it private?
No,
It's-
it's the company land.
It's, as I understand it, and the directors themselves were not absolutely certain. It's their land, but there's a public right of way.
Yeah.
And it's actually marked in different paving stone colour. It may be that I mean, they're quite happy for the public to walk through, and indeed they do, but it's impossible for people on wheelchairs to get up that way. They're quite happy for it to continue to be a public right of way, but it may have to be renewed in some way, but as part of this process. Councillor Schuker.
Yes, and on that point, that alleyway, the lighting wasn't working for a very long period of time, and I had some residents came to me about it, and I liaised with the directors, and they recently fixed it. And what you're relaying in terms of ownership is exactly what they said to me.
Yeah.
Their land, public right of way, and certainly we've now got the lighting up and running on there, which is great.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
Oh yeah, in these cases, because I deal with quite a lot of this of work that the work that I do, paperwork. It would be something called a way leave, which is a legal document allowing the public right of way through that land, because that land does belong to the developers of Ainsley Court. It's been well known for quite some time. So the first thing we'd have to do is we'd have to get the permission of whoever's taken out the way leave, which would probably be Kent County Council, to ask them if we can amend the walkway, because if they've got the rights to the way leave, and then we put an amendment in like a ramp, and they're not happy with it, then they could tell us to take it back out. So we need to, whoever owns the way leave to allow the public to go through, we need to contact them to make sure we get permission to do that. So.
Okay. I mean, that sounds very complicated, but I mean, it may well be necessary as an insurance against.
Yeah. All I'm really saying is from a legal point of view, as well as Ainsley Court Limited, I think that we should check with King County Council to see who owns the way leave through there. So.
Okay. Thank you for that suggestion. Mrs. George.
Sorry, can we, I know when we had previous disability meetings, we talked about the issue of disabled people and mothers with buggies and so on being able to, that's their only way in. But to do that safely, we also asked for the hatchback or crossings over the bridge, because that's another hazard. So if you're coming from the car park and you're walking towards that alleyway, which is the only way, safe way for access, they've got to manoeuvre the traffic lights on that bridge. And it was indicated, shall we say, by KCC that we could have some proper lining on the road there to make sure that pedestrians were going to be safe if they were on that crossing going across. So I'm just wondering whether that's being pursued as well.
Not at the moment, no, but it's a good suggestion, and we should pursue it. I mean, another suggestion that's been made about making all those crossings safer is to reorganise the traffic lights.
Yeah.
So at least that there's a pause where pedestrians can cross and people on mobility scooters can cross, because at the moment it's really unsafe.
Yeah.
Crossing.
So on that point, I'm just going to ask, within your working group, I know that the last meeting, because I did watch it, that you were intending to do a walk around the town. Has that happened yet?
No,
If it
it hasn't, because
then that could easily feature it as
Yes,
part of
it
that.
could. I mean, we do need to get going with this walk round, and I sent round a message and hardly anybody replied.
Right.
So, well, I know Councillor Ripley did, but
So I assume it'll be an outcome of a
List of things. List of things.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think we've done it about 3 times. So
Yeah.
this walk around the town has been done several times. And in fact, I mean, the previous council had it all sorted as well. We've done it. We've walked around the town because that's how we've discovered that that's the way through. And there are loads of other places. The big issue here is that you can walk around the town and you can come up with all of the places that need drop curbs, access, better crossings, better road markings, you name it, we can come up with them, and we have done, but no one has got any money to do it. And Kent County Council refused to do it, it comes back to the HIP report. And I mean, they'll tell you was it £2,500 to drop one curb?
Yeah.
So as much as you can do that process again,
yes.
it almost feels as though, can we get one if we get one thing sorted out, and this sounds complicated again then, so
Yes. I think
it's just that, I mean, that was the whole idea of Milk Alley being
Yes.
opened at the
Yes.
top, so, and then we've still got the issue of people crossing Strand Street and how far down they have to go to do that, and they can't be a crossing there either because it's 2 posted corners, so it's quite,
Complicated.
it's very
I think we
complicated.
should bring back the two-way traffic system. Traffic never went fast, you didn't know who was coming around the corner. So it's a one-way system, everything's speeded up.
Yes. Well, I think for the moment, I mean, we've had a helpful discussion, and obviously the disability access friendly route can take things forward, but as you say, it's deeply frustrating because there's no money to do anything apparently. But we do have a little budget here in this town council, and it seems to me appropriate to start small, which is how we did with Milk Alley. We took that bar down, and I have to say it's been a huge success.
Yeah.
People still come up to me and say it's absolutely brilliant that we can get through here now. So here's another small thing that we can do that can improve things in important ways. So can we, so we have a recommendation from Councillor Carter that we ask the town clerk or somebody, the assistant town clerk perhaps, to write to Kent County Council to establish the legal position of the in putting in a ramp at that spot. I think also it would be helpful to write to the Ainsley Court directors and ask if their letter of July 2022, which is reproduced as an attachment to this report, still stands in terms of their consent to this happening. So that would be helpful. So that's one set of proposals, and that, well, I think that's the only set of proposals for the moment, and then it comes back.
So it was just, I mean, I've gone through, I mean, sorry about the bagpipes. Trying to find a bit more about Ainsley Court.
Okay.
I know Fisherman's Walk, I know Pillory Gate, which are open to the air. There's a little cut through which is in a within the buildings, and then there's a further cut through further up.
We're talking about
Which one are we talking about?
We're talking about the one that goes through the buildings.
Right.
And it's not Pillory Gate, it's called Ives Gate.
Yes.
And there's in different paving, it looks like there's a footpath through, but there are 2 steps, which mean that if you're in a wheelchair or pushing any,
See, I never go through there because it looks like it's private.
No, it isn't.
Sorry, can we just be clear as well that the 2 alleyways were explored by the previous group. You can't get one of the big wheelchairs down the first alleyway, and if you can in the second one, but when you get to the other end there's no pavement. So effectively, you can't take
Right.
you can't take anything on
Sorry.
there, which is why I think came up with the idea that that would be the most straightforward way, and it would lead to a wide enough pavement to at least manoeuvre
Yeah.
to the next junction to get across.
Across Love
Love
Lane,
Lane.
It's very complicated.
It is, but it's a start,
Mm.
and I think we have to just start small. So, if we can all, so I'm proposing that somebody on the Guildhall staff write to both KCC to establish a legal position and to Ainsley Court directors to make certain that they're still happy for this development to take place.
I'll second that.
Okay, and can we all vote on that? And then the replies from both sets will come back to this committee, and then we can establish how we want to take things further with tenders and so on. Fine, thank you. Okay, a little moment while we get to attachment 4, which is doctor's only parking. And this is a report, I have to say that it's linked to my thinking about trying to get an accessible route from the Quay car park into town, because when we did the walkabout and had a jolly good look at it, we saw that it would be much easier if 2 parking spaces in Strand Street were removed. And at that time, the doctor's surgery hadn't closed. It has now. There are still what look to me like 3 parking spaces, but maybe cars are so big now, they're 2, which say doctors beside them. And it's 2, but I would say 3 little cars could get in there. But they say doctors beside them, and there is no notice above them indicating any parking regulation at all. There is a notice on the other side by what I think of as the old Dolls Museum, or like Kimber's Golden Crust Bakery, or whatever it's now housing, and that there is a notice there. So the purpose of this report was to consider making a request to DDC Parking Services to withdraw the designation of 3 parking spaces, or maybe it's 2, in Harnett Street as doctors only, where it doesn't actually say doctors only, it just says doctor twice, and to ask that these parking spaces revert to general parking spaces for residents and visitors. And I suggested that the Sandwich Medical Practice premises in Butchery are now closed, and there's no longer any need for designated doctors' parking spaces in Harnett Street. These parking spaces should now be made available for residents and visitors, subject to the usual regulations for parking in Sandwich Zone J, which it is. And the recommendation was that the committee request the town clerk write to the Director of DDC Parking Services to ask that the designation of these spaces as doctors only will be rescinded and the spaces revert to general use by residents and visitors. And I think, as possibly all members, perhaps not the co-opted members of this committee, are aware, there's been some discussion from Councillor Marie, who's not here, indicating that this is an unnecessary report, and he's on top of this. And there's been a reply, an email reply from somebody called Dean
He's parking manager.
Aldridge or something like
Dean
that.
Aldridge, yeah, he's the parking manager.
Indicating that that it's in hand, but it would cost £2,000, which I was unclear as to what that would cover. It seems rather a lot of money, and I found it very difficult to understand, but maybe, you know, that's the standard cost for removing doctor on the road and putting up a new standard notice on the
Maybe you just pay
gutter immediately beside it. But anyway, Councillor Shuker.
So when this story sort of unfolded in front of my eyes via email, I wasn't confident in terms of the messages that were being shared with the committee about the backstory.
No.
So I decided to do some investigation through another route. So I just wanted to give another version of what I've been told
Right.
the circumstances are.
Right.
So one of the questions I wanted to know was when the request was first raised to remove the parking spaces. The answer I got back that it was reported to DDC a few times in the past 6 months, which sort of goes against the 21 or 22, depending which email you look at. And also I asked the question was asked who had raised the request, and it was members of the public. Then also regards the traffic regulations order, at what stage was it in the process? And some of this aligns with what you've just said. So DDC looking at other issues as well that they can add in due to the cost of the TRO. But it's 2 free spaces at the moment. Well, it is and it isn't, because people turning up thinking it's for a doctor may well not park there.
Well,
Yeah. And then the other question that was asked was, when was the nameplate actually removed? And the answer is believe that it was at the beginning of February this year. So I'm confused about it because I haven't lived and breathed this issue. But when emails are circulated very forcefully,
yes.
talking about this has been going on since 21, 22, it just doesn't compute with me in terms of what I've now learned.
Yes.
But it doesn't stop the need to look at
No.
what needs to be done.
I have to say that I also noticed that one of the emails suggested that the issue had been raised on. Oh, well, no, I'll come back to that.
No, I've read everything thoroughly because I'm always looking for parking in the most opportune way. So my reading of it is, in my case, and the same applies to anybody, because there is not a sign and matching the lines on the road, nothing works. You have to have the sign and the lines.
Yeah.
Sign, no lines doesn't work. Lines, no sign doesn't work. So at the moment, with no sign, you can park. You just abandon your car
Yes.
forever.
So it's not.
Yes. So it's almost a case of keep it quiet.
Well,
But we can't. Obviously, we can't.
Leave
Well,
it to some.
I
But
have to
this-
say, it's,
Yes.
that's information accessible to people who live in this town
Yes.
and are very familiar with it.
Yeah.
But we are constantly trying to increase the number of visitors.
So
and,
we need a
and
sign
any visitor.
and the markings.
Absolutely.
I was going to say the doctor's surgery only actually shut last year, didn't it? Because it's not even
Yes.
clinical thing. So it was only 2023 that surgery closed.
Yeah.
They didn't need the 2
Yes,
slots.
but the emails suggested that the process started in 2022. That it was being raised in 2020 or one.
Right.
Yes.
Mrs. George.
I think this is all very well and good that you could park there legally, but actually I don't think your parking attendants are aware of that. We pulled up there with a disabled badge last week, and I had 2 lots of DDC people really have a go at the fact that we were parked there, actually unloading shopping. And I said, this is free, we can park here. We were only stopping for about 10 minutes, but they weren't aware of it.
But-
And were about to give us a ticket, and I said, perhaps you'd like to go away and have a look at this first. And then another DDC lorry came round, a truck came round and had a real go that because, if you're coming through the butchery, and you're parked and there's another car parked in front of you, there is really only space for two cars to be safe, and they didn't like this either. So I think some clarity needs to be brought. I mean, I think the residents who I know have complained are quite happy to go out and paint out the sign themselves if necessary. But you know, so I think if it is okay to park there, then there needs to be something official that says it's okay to park there, even if that's by a communication on social media from the council to say this is what we found out, and you can do that. But the big problem, if you say it's a free for all, is that someone could park there all day, and that is not going to help, because those little restaurants are also parking in and out, waiting for people to pop over, get their food, come back again. But it needs some sort of restriction on timing, I think.
But on a cost benefit, and that, you know, you've got, if it's £2,000 to put up the sign and mark the space for 2 spaces, that's 500 hours worth of parking to actually pay back because it's about £2 an hour to park, approaching that. So you know, for if it was just 1 space, that would be 1,000 hours of parking to pay it back. So DDC will be looking at it and saying, well, that's going to take about a year. I don't know how many. So a year to pay.
And you don't have to pay in the 3 bays that are there.
Oh, no, you don't.
You can park there for an hour.
Yes, and if it's the free area, then there's no benefit whatsoever to do anything. So it's
not top of their list.
So I would like to hear from you as to how you would like to proceed. Councillor Carter.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think the cost is mainly to get the TRO changed, and that would be with KCC. So whoever suggested that the bays are changed from doctors only to public parking would have to pay to have the traffic regulation order changed, which is legislation. TROs are actually a part of parliamentary legislation. So I think that's where the costs are. Can I suggest, as sort of leader of the council, that it's not Sandwich Town Council that suggests that this is done, because Sandwich Town Council has not got any traffic regulation statutory reason to undertake this, and shouldn't be paying the £2,000 for it to be done. These were done when I was on the traffic forum for DDC. These were done as a matter of sort of everyday regulation at DDC at the traffic forum. Anybody that's attended there, they used to take away like disabled bays or doctor's bays or something like that. It would come up on the agenda and it would say Doctor's Bay outside of Maisondew House or something like that in Dover, and they'd say revert to public parking, all those in favour, and it got voted on, and then it got passed up to KCC to be done. So this should come from DDC.
But does it then go from a request? I'm thinking about the traffic orders that came in when we stopped the lorries coming in, because at that point we had to put traffic orders in. But it went through from the town thing to Sandwich Town Council to Kent County Council, back to Dover, and then back here, and then back to Dover to the Joint Transport Board. And at that point, then they and KCC agreed that we could have temporary traffic orders in. So is that the process that still exists?
No, so I can update you, sorry. The traffic forums have been stopped. So there's no communication or conduit now between us and Kent Highways. I haven't been for over a year to the traffic forums, which is a great loss. And I would suggest the same as with planning regulations, that a Dover District Councillor for the Sandwich Ward, I'm not saying which one, contacts DDC, because they're the parking services. They've got the regulation on it, and then the person who does that should tell DDC Parking Services. DDC Parking Services should contact Kent County Council Highways to get this sorted, and that would be how it would happen.
I was just going to say, originally the doctor's spaces were outside the estate agents in Market Street, you know, Colbrook Street. There were two doctor's spaces there, and then they thought it's more important to have that as public, you know, ordinary parking for shoppers, and that's why they were just two ordinary spaces at Breezy Corner, and that's why they swapped the spaces up to Breezy Corner.
That's correct.
Well, it sounds as though we're not going to get very far because the Director of Parking Services apparently replied to Councillor Marie, saying that this was not a high priority and it was going to cost £2,000 and basically we can just whistle. Which is very disappointing.
Yes, so can we not turn it into something more positive from a town council perspective in terms of engaging with the DDC officer? We can write, we can state the benefit, the value of removing those signage, because it's about tourism, about visitors, all of that. I think we should do that at least to log that with them. We shouldn't just say it's a lost cause necessarily. I think we should at least put something in, because from what I can see, the stuff is at a very low level. It's not really setting the strategy. You know, the whole point about this is it adds extra spaces to the town.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you for that, because I strongly agree with that. Yes, Councillor Tomlins, and then I think we should move
It might not be a popular suggestion, but as we're looking at disability access, would it be worth pursuing it as a disabled?
Yes, it would. I mean, there are
Should make it
two
more
arguments.
sensible,
There's about,
accessible.
local people know,
Mm.
so they know they can park there forever if they wanted to, which some of them might. I should have kept quiet about that. But visitors don't, and it would assist trying to get a route through, because it adds 2 parking spaces, and it's possible that if we're working on an accessible route, we might want to remove 2 parking spaces in Strand Street, and that's a problem.
The only thing I would say, and this isn't dismissing because I think it's a very valid thing to say, is at the other end of Butchery Lane is a parking space for disabled. So as soon as you get to the other end, there is a space there.
I'm not talking about parking for disabled people, I'm talking about actually moving from the quay car park through with the ramp.
Sorry, I was
through
responding
into-
to
Yes, sorry.
But there may not be enough disabled parking in the town, so.
And it's central, which makes it much more accessible.
Yes. So, would you like to endorse the recommendation that the committee request the town clerk write to the Director of DDC Parking Services to ask that the designation of these spaces as doctors only, well, it actually just says doctor twice, be rescinded and the spaces revert to general use by residents and visitors? Would you like to endorse that? Is that a proposal? I mean, it seems that Councillor Shuker is suggesting that.
I think there's value in doing that. We haven't.
Can we add
Yes.
the Dover District Councillor to look at writing to KCC as well? Is that part? Sorry.
Well,
I don't know whether I'm allowed to put a proposal through, but there's two functions there. Or
yes,
actions.
well, according to one of the Dover District Councillors, he has already written, but it's very confusing as to when he wrote and had a reply. It's not clear, but Councillor.
Yeah, I'm just actually backing up what Mrs. George says. This would actually have more emphasis and impetus to actually get moved on if it was came from the DDC councillor, as I said originally. I think if the Sandwich Town Council town clerk wrote in, it would just be seen as a request from a parish or town council. If we were able to get a DDC councillor to make this request, then the head of parking services would have to look into it in a greater priority than from the town clerk, and that's no not anything personal or against the town clerk. I think if the Dover District Councillor did it,
But
it would be.
there are two Dover District Councillors.
Indeed, and
and
you
one of
choose
them
which one you want.
says that he has already done this.
Well, could we have evidence from him to say that he's
Copy
done
of
it?
the letter would be helpful.
Yes,
yeah,
it would.
because we don't know what's.
No. Right, so we have a suggestion that we ask one or both of the Dover District Councillors.
Both, I suggest. To become better, I would suggest if both were it.
Okay. So, is that seconded?
I'll second that.
Okay. Those voting in favour of asking the two Dover District Councillors to request of the Director of Parking Services?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, that was passed. Okay, so now we turn to verbal updates on the projects which we're all engaged with. And again, I'm going to give you, I asked for the scoping documents to be attached, just as a reminder to the individual councillors running these projects. So the first one that comes up is, I think, the one that Councillor Ripley is, I'm failing to get it. It's very odd the way this works. Well,
Airbnbs.
Mm.
Airbnbs.
it's the Airbnbs, yes. So I'm just trying to, so Councillor Ripley, if you could just verbally update us.
Yeah, I mean, I've got most of the way through this now. The only, one of the problems that I'm having is identifying, as you know, I call them Airbnbs, but I just mean second homes, holiday lets. Because, as I've said on many occasions, a lot of them on, if you look on, for example, the Airbnb site, don't have external photographs of them and don't have addresses with them, so you're left with a bit of quandary as to where they are and what they are. If you walk around the streets, sometimes you can pick out which are which, but keypads aren't a given because some elderly folk obviously rely on keypads for entrance. So the end result of this, or one of the things that we were aiming to do, was to hold a seminar or something like that for people to turn up to. But I'm wondering now about the best way to do this, because we can't actually specifically target those properties that are holiday lets, because we don't know where they all are. I'm thinking of reverting to my initial thought of a blanket letter to all the homes in central Sandwich, and any of those properties outside that area that we can specifically identify, which would just involve a load of us going around putting letters through them. Now, the problem is, of course, that you can't guarantee that anybody will respond, etc. So it's a little bit of a, suck it and see type exercise. And I've gone off the idea of holding a sort of a seminar type thing. I don't think that would be successful in the circumstances. I think possibly a drop-in session held over a number of hours perhaps might be a better idea. A group of us could perhaps hold a session and update people on what the new rules and regulations are. And to that end, the government has just brought out a new, in February of this year, it's called Short-Term Let Rules to Protect Communities and Keep Homes Available, in which they're proposing a mandatory national register, which would be absolutely brilliant, apart from other things that they are. I've got loads of bumps and information about current rules and regulations, rates applicable, I mean, I did an FOI to Dover District Council asking them to help me identify, and they came back. They have 18 properties that they know about in Sandwich, but they can't give me any information other than that because of, you know,
GDPR.
yes, exactly. And you know, I know for a fact that there's infinitely more than that.
Yes.
You know, on Airbnb alone, I think there's, I can't remember how many I've got here, but I've just got lists and lists and lists of them.
150 to 200.
Yeah, I reckon it's between 100 and 200 properties. And that's without the second homes that we're looking at. But one of the points I want to make is that this isn't a negative about Airbnbs.
No.
I think it's terribly important that we understand the importance of these to our tourism.
Yes.
You know, it's a major thing, getting people into the town. What we do need to do is to acknowledge that, but also to make sure that all those properties that are offered to visitors are safe, because and are paying the relevant rates, which some of them aren't paying either business rates or council tax, depending on their setup. Yeah, and just make sure. I mean, there's a lot of cases where proper insurance cover isn't applied for, and all sorts of other things. So I think there's certainly room for a drop-in session where we could update everybody on what is required and what the legal status is at the moment. And it also might help us to identify those properties. But it is a bit of a, yes, will we or won't we get anybody coming?
Yes.
Will they acknowledge, you know?
Yes. I mean, one of the features of Airbnb is that it is unregulated.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how
Although the Airbnb
that's its
sites
unique selling point.
yeah, but they do have a lot of rules and regulations of their own. Airbnb do.
Right.
I'm not so sure about some of the other companies. I'm sure they do, but it's not quite so obvious with all of them. A lot of them do, but not all of them. But of course, some are just people just set up on their own and just advertise completely independently. And I think they're the ones who have to be a little bit careful about to ensure that they do comply with all the rules and regulations that are currently in place, let alone the ones that are coming in, you know, whenever the government puts these proposals. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Schuster.
So I was just going to add in some suggestions. So I think my personal view is mail shotting isn't the right way to go, because you'll be mail shotting more people than not who aren't a stakeholder in this process. So I don't think that's probably the right approach. I think the right approach is part of what you said, which is about offering a drop-in session, etc., to allow to have a conversation. Because some of the things, so one issue last year was the mosquitoes in the town, and I saw a number of posts on Facebook from Airbnb letting owners saying, this is affecting my business, you know, what's the town going to do about this? So a reasonable challenge, but you know, so I think there's a conversation there. It's not just about a dictation of stuff from us, and we aren't the right people to dictate any of this around running a business. But I think have a session, bring them in, see what their issues are, what we can do to support them, and if nobody turns up, well, at least we've tried. So I think there's some messages there you'd like to get across.
Yes, there are. Just in response to that, I mean, I sort of agree with you in the blanket mail shotting.
Do it through the media, social media,
yeah,
and
I
posters.
think so, but that doesn't always work terribly well, does it? The other thing is, of course, that there are people in the town who aren't Airbnb or etc. owners, but who do have a stake in this because they live next door to a lot of, you know. So it actually impacts on all of us, not just those people, and they need to come in and find out what's what and etc. as well. So I don't know, I'm just open to suggestions at the moment.
If I could just say, I wonder if you've talked to the local estate agents, because they're the people. I mean, the worry about Airbnb is that and short-term rents and holiday homes is that it's removing housing opportunities for local people, and that's the the problem.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, it helps tourism, but on the other hand, local residents and their children may be suffering as a consequence.
Yeah.
So, but estate agents are at the nub of selling properties.
Yeah. I mean, I
possibly
haven't been
for
in touch with estate agents, but I am conscious of that aspect of it. And this new thing from the government is putting into place certain things that might help with that for future planning, but that won't impact on the centre of an old town. You know, this is for future planning.
No, I think
That's right.
that's it. I was just going to let you know that, sorry.
Yes.
I think Councillor Black was first.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
I think one of the challenges you've got is that a lot of Airbnb owners are going to be fairly suspicious. And I think the message needs to be balanced, which is also what can we do for you? What's on the positive side? And that may be something that you were going to say. It is a very difficult message because almost everything that comes out of local authorities is perceived as being negative. And it's right for the whole community, but not necessarily for sections. So I need to think about the positive aspects as well. And not just because otherwise, I mean, one of my neighbours is quite a significant landlord. Now, he might be very twitchy about this, and so on. But I don't think he's Airbnb. I think he's more longer term lets.
Yeah, I think that was what I was going to say. Can we not turn this around? So we're saying this is an information drop-in.
That's
We
what I was
probably
aiming
have to have
get
all the legislation, all the information. What can we do for you? What can you do for us? I know that when we did a count, I think it was last year, it may have even been the year before, and one of our town team members went down the Airbnb listing. There was something like 52 in the town then of people listed on an Airbnb site for rent, but they're not, obviously they don't show their fronts of their houses, as you well know, it's only the inside. But I'm sure it's escalated since then. But I think if it was a drop-in centre, but it was more sort of aimed at saying, what can we do for you? There's new legislation. We know that you're important to tourism, but here's some information, and here are some of the issues that neighbours or the council raises, like litter and how you deal with it, and have you got the right insurance cover? I mean, you might be able to get some key people from insurers or the new government legislation, someone who knows about it, to be present, so they can go and ask questions.
Sorry, I was just going to respond in a way to that, in that that's the way my mind has been going. It's got to be, because I was thinking of if people don't respond and actually come to a drop-in session, and we know their second home, property let owners, we could always put a leaflet of advice and etc. through the door if nobody turns up. We can get this information out there. It's just the ways we can do it. But as I said, terribly important not to come across as negative in any way.
It is also the kind of, information of the kind that you're suggesting would be appropriate for Sandwich Town Council website.
Yeah.
Because
indeed.
They are people
And I have got a lot of it.
Councillor Mayor.
Just in terms of Airbnb, holiday let, council tax, business rates, I'm currently converting a barn into residential and holiday let. Holiday let will be business rates. The residential side will be council tax, of which the precept, I will pay part of that council tax will be the precept. If, for example, Airbnbs were to become holiday lets officially, which to an extent maybe they should be, they move from council tax to business rates. Our precept goes down. The holiday let owner, their business rates in relation to, as opposed to council tax, potentially goes up. So I think there's financial impacts as well, not just what we call it.
But they then have to pay for their own rubbish to be.
Yes.
If it's a business,
Yeah.
they're not entitled to have their
That will
rubbish
come.
collected.
I will have that.
So
Yes,
they have
I'm
to
going
pay.
to, we've got a lot to talk about in these updates, so I don't want, so just Councillor Carter, and I think that's just a bit.
Very
Okay,
Oh yeah,
Councillor-
mine was very brief. It was just to say that the government legislation was discussed on Radio 4 about 2 weeks ago, and they said it's completely toothless.
Really?
It gives
Well-
the local district councils absolutely no means of regulating
Well-
Airbnbs.
Yeah,
And
I
the way
did- I
you
did wonder.
use the word mandatory, it's only mandatory if people
Because
want to
do
sign up to it. But if they don't, the district council cannot fine anybody for not signing up to it. So it's toothless, I'm sorry to say.
Okay, and Councillor
I
Ripley,
have
just,
absolutely no idea what I was going to say, so.
okay, that's fine. Well, thank you very much, and you've been doing a lot of work, thank you. Okay, so now we turn to, I'm just getting it up.
I know what I was going to say.
Bike racks. Councillor Carter.
Oh yeah, I haven't got very far with this
Okay.
because when it's determining there's lots of different bike racks. There's council bike racks and private bike racks on private land. So I'm just trying to determine the different types of bike racks that you can have. So for instance, there's certain bike racks. There's apparently no regulation for any council to supply bicycle racks. It's just purely if they wish to do so. There is some planning regulations about it. So if a new housing development goes in, they should put in cycleways and cycle parking. But the old existing regulations didn't say that it was necessary. So for instance, Councillor Franklin will probably know, is the no-name delicatessen put in cycle parking, but that was a purely private arrangement with no district council to put the cycle parking in. I don't know if you've seen, Carol might have seen, there was like flower troughs you could dock your bike up to. So it's very, very complicated, and that's as far as I've got.
Oh, well, that's fine, but
So
anyway, something is happening, which is
Indeed.
excellent, thank you.
Sorry, could I just add in something? We discussed at STC probably 3 meetings ago the public consultation on the Kent cycling and walking infrastructure
Yes.
plan. And if we are successful, we will have funding, it was suggesting, for bicycle racks.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure that you're including that in your train of thought
Indeed, I will.
in terms of an opportunity.
Indeed,
Yes.
I will, yeah, because obviously at the result of my, when I complete the report, I will be looking for funding outside of Sandwich Town Council
Yes.
or indeed
Can I,
council.
could I just ask you, you haven't forgotten the issue of the no cycling on the road
Yeah.
walk and the bus,
Oh
because
yeah,
that keeps coming up.
signage,
The
yeah, the signage, yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, well, signage is a different project.
It's,
Yes.
yeah, that's it, yeah, it's not my project actually.
So I just, yes, well, thank you very much. I mean, I'm aware that we're having to skip through. So the next one is community transport. Councillor Black, you also sent round
An updated.
an update. Yes. So I think I'm going to try and finish this meeting when the curfew bell ends at 8:10. So we've got a few more minutes. So let's try and restrict to.
My apologies for the two co-op members. I omitted to send the update to you. My apologies. I sent it to everybody else. Basically, I've had meetings now with Age Concern, with Woodnesborough Parish Council and Worth Parish Councils. Woodnesborough are not in the least interested in anything at all because they say that the public bus service is fine. That also says to me, we don't bother going up Woodnesborough Road at all to Polders or anything like that, unless you were turning into St Bart's Road, Laburnum Avenue or wherever. Worth were more interested, and Age Concern were more interested. They said, look, the difficulties, people will say, oh yes, we really want it. The reality is they didn't support it. small community service which goes from Worth into Deal 3 times a day in the mornings. But that's not particularly heavily used. Now, Mr. Jordan, I've got to come back to you and see about what we can do about some kind of survey. I've got to, there will be a NALC webinar on community transport, which Councillor Angus and I should be attending, an online one. It's looking quite difficult at the moment. I also need to speak to Councillor Marie about current operators. So we are making progress. It is going very slowly though. And really I would welcome written suggestions or just even an email as to what you prefer and which areas in particular you think should be there. Because by the sound of it, Polders anywhere beyond St Bart's Road is not going to make worthwhile at all. Clearly, it was pointed out to me that Sandwich Bay was not going to be a likely destination for a community bus.
No.
For some reason.
Sandown Lees could be.
Well, this is why I would welcome suggestions from you folks as to where you think the most demand is. And then I think I'll maybe, Councillor Marie and I was thinking of trying a couple of routes with him, because as a professional driver, he'll know how easy it is to get into some of these places and not. So I need to speak to him when he gets back from whenever, and his rest day.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I was just going to ask whether the community bus was going to be integrated as school transport at all.
Absolutely not.
Okay, in that case, I would suggest that it's sort of probably centred on the areas of low income, because say for instance Sandown Road, although it's a little way out of the town, a large number of the people down there obviously all own cars and transport like that. Usually these schemes are better in areas where there's low income.
Yes, I think you're right, Councillor. But as I say, if you could drop me a note, folks, as to where else you think that would be most useful. And
sorry, we can say that it looks quite a wealthy area, but one of the issues that we've heard in the town team is that it's not just about the fact that they've got a car. If they take a car from there to here, they've got huge parking fees, and that's actually stopping them coming into the town. So what they're saying is if there was a community bus that ran around and they knew they could get on that bus, then A, they wouldn't be bringing their cars into town, or they actually might start using the town again, because they're not at the moment. They'd rather take the car and go to Westwood Cross or somewhere where it's not paying. So I think there is an issue about what that catchment area might look like.
I think you're right. That Age Concern had similar issues, but they've said that that a lot of people said they were very interested and never did.
Yeah.
And the other problem you've got is if you're going to use volunteer drivers, it's the only economic way to do it. Faversham, Age Concern and Worth all said there is a problem in having a sufficiently large pool of volunteer drivers. Age Concern, the manager's having to do a lot of it himself, and that taking him his time.
I think you might find that with this webinar that you're going to attend, that there are really substantial grants available for community buses. But I'm just getting.
I spoke to Councillor Chandler. She was going to put me in touch with that. I've sent the paper to her. So far I haven't had a response.
Right.
But unfortunately, experience of both Faversham and Thanet with Kent County Council has not been the most productive. And even Councillor Chandler admitted that funds are very, very tight. Because she was with me at the Worth one and at the Woodensborough one, and said,
I'm beginning to say we need to move on.
No, I was just going to say we did have a community bus that was funded by Kent County Council, and we actually donated money into it, didn't we?
We did.
And I think I remember about a year or 2 years. The thing is, are these passengers going to pay fares, or is it going to be free? Because if they're going to pay a fare, you're going to have a proper driver with a public licence.
no,
Well,
you don't have to. The legislation, Section 22 legislation allows to charge fares with volunteer drivers.
So I think, I mean, we can expect a report from Councillor Black as and when he feels ready, and it will include those kinds of variables. And we can decide whether this is something we want to pursue. I mean, that's on
We don't know at the moment.
grounds of what he's discovered. Okay, so can we move on to
Insulation.
oh yes, now I think this is me, isn't it? Yes. I have to say that I haven't done anything. I haven't taken this any further. However, we did have the pre-meeting with the Heritage Officer, which where she was very clear that this was not something that, you know, fully insulating grade 2 houses and houses in the conservation area was not a top priority for her at all. And I did write in the scoping document that I wanted to invite Councillor Susan Beer, who's the Climate Change and Environment Cabinet Member of DDC, and Councillor Edward Biggs, who's the Planning and Built Environment Cabinet Member, to a meeting. So that's what I would like to suggest, that I know it's yet another thing for the town clerk to do, but that the town clerk write to invite them to come to a meeting of the Heritage and Townscape Committee, possibly as a pre-meeting, which would mean it wouldn't be recorded, or as part of the regular meeting, to ask them what their view is about these issues, because you know, councillors have different views sometimes from their officers, or can be persuaded to talk to their officers and say, this is not quite how we want to proceed. Councillor Mann.
Oh, very briefly, I can tick off number 6 for you.
Oh, good.
There are no grants.
Right.
Unless you're on benefits. If you're on benefits, there is the option.
Yes.
But conservation area, I think,
Yes.
is very few.
In fact, I was aware of that for benefits, that benefits are the criterion.
I've been trying to get.
Yeah. So that doesn't apply to, unlikely to apply to grade 2 listed buildings.
There's nothing for grade 2. I'm now looking for scheduled to see if they're scheduled, because
I was just giving some advice, just to say possibly it'd be better to invite the officers from Dover District Council. Oh, yeah, you said you were going to invite the portfolio holders who are councillors.
Yes.
They won't have the up-to-date knowledge and information about regulations. I would
No,
invite.
but they may
officers.
have a view about.
Oh, they may have a view. What
Yes.
is that view going to undertake when they get back to the council
Perhaps
chamber?
talking to their officers, because the heritage officer came here.
I know that. Yeah, I'm trying to work through the workflow to see how it's going to get.
Well,
Awesome.
I think the councillors, you know, they represent the residents of Dover District Council, and there are some residents in Sandwich who perhaps would like their voices heard.
Yeah, sure.
And we represent them.
It seems crazy that houses that have been built like Whitefriars have been built in the last 30 or 40 years. They can have double glazing right by the market,
Yes.
and the conservation houses, because they're 200-year-old, on a back aspect, no one can see it, except the neighbours, and they say no. It's
Exactly.
absolutely
Not even the
ridiculous.
neighbours can see it.
No.
Because that's
Yes,
the
it is.
NPPF though. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying you've got to talk to the
Yeah.
officers.
Well, we have talked to the officers, and now I think it's a time to talk to the councillors and see whether there's anything that they can do to help. So is that okay? Good. So let's move on. And we now have, parking. This is a new scoping document from Councillor Marie. And we need to make any comments if we wish to. I wasn't quite clear about. Has anybody got any comments?
Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Shuker.
So when I've read through it, because this is the first opportunity to discuss it, and it's unfortunate Councillor Marie's not here, but I couldn't quite understand the sequencing outlined in the scoping document and what we can expect in the report, which will be 9 months from now. So that's just a general comment, and we could have had that conversation, so it's unfortunate. But just two very specific things. The line item relating to free parking, for me, should be very much about presenting cost of proposals to STC. There isn't an intention within STC, because we haven't discussed it and voted on it, to approve, for example, which is what's quoted in, is an hour's free parking. It's a discussion to be had. So we can't leap to that being the expected outcome. And then just very specific comment. I personally am not happy with the inclusion of what is a politically motivated reference of extortionate parking charges. Because I did look back, actually, interestingly, at the last two councils under the previous administration. In 2023, the charges went up 7%. So I wouldn't necessarily say that's extortionate. 2022, it went up 25%. Now, I would have personally felt that was extortionate, regardless of the circumstances. So it's a word I don't see, but in terms of what we're about, we should be building into project documents.
Entirely agree.
That's just a very personal view.
Parking.
Can I just, Councillor Franklin, then Councillor Black?
Yeah, parking. We lost a lot of parking was an extension of the doctor's surgery. And if you've got there's a massive great empty space in front of the doctor's surgery. And I think perhaps we should get someone from parking to see where to redesign it so that we can get more spaces available up the back of the market, because they've got massive great roadways, haven't they? Even if it ends up with herringbone parking. But I think we should ask someone just to look at it, look at the space. I know it'd be awkward in some places because you've got the lampposts and you've got the parking bit, but I'm sure they could be incorporated into a more modern design and to facilitate the whole area, because at the moment I think we've got a lot of wasted room at the back.
Well, that's
And
very
that's our
interesting.
car park as well.
Yes, well, maybe that should be added in to the what's in scope section. That's a very good idea. Yes, Councillor.
Yes, I specifically wrote to Councillor Marie about his walkabout, and I have agreed with him, and I've got it in writing, that it has to be STC councillors, because he's got KCC councillor, DDC councillor, DDC parking service, current members of parliament even. But he kind of forgets it's STC councillor. I'm doubting if he's walking around Southward without me being there.
Yes.
And I think you might others sort of think the same, sir.
Yeah.
I don't think a prospective member of parliament would walk around the South Ward.
I think we should take
It's a serious issue.
Yeah, sorry, maybe if you got your projects ahead of his, you could get a community bus and drive them all around.
I think
I've got a volunteer for that.
Chair, can I just say, Tom?
Yes.
Sorry, the space in front of the doctor's surgery, and I did query that before, and they said they need it because they often bring ambulances in. That was the doctor's or the receptionist's response.
Yeah, but I think that's right. I
I'm
think we should
not
look at that.
disagreeing with you, I'm just saying what I was told.
Okay,
The
so-
other thing
yes.
is that the town team, Councillor Marie told us that with respect to parking, if you wanted to reduce parking costs and so on, you really needed to come up with a plan for the town for parking. And I did remind him that we actually did come up with a plan, which was for Market Street to have one-way traffic, one side parking, 20 minutes free for the post office and the chemist, and then out through the butchery, because there is no doctor's surgery now, so it's much safer. All of that would take some survey, some how much traffic goes in and out, how much money do you lose in Market Street if you have free parking. And I would suggest it's quite low, because most people nip in there and just park anyway. So you'd have to find out, I suppose, from DDC what their take is on two meters and how much it would cost if you could give that piece free. That would, I think, help the centre of town traders to, because after 20 minutes, if you were going to stay longer, then you would have to put some more money in the meter, but it might encourage the people to come in and then just spend that extra hour to shop sort of locally, especially for those people who don't want to walk, which I know it's not very far, but from the cattle market car park. But there was an idea, so it might be that at some point the town council has to put a plan together that says this is a proposal that we could make.
Yes. Well, I think we've had a number of suggestions as to how this scoping document might be altered. We don't like the word extortionate, and we do want, we want the walkabout to include Sandwich Town councillors, and I think what Mrs. George is suggesting is possibly included under key milestones, a review with the town team on parking areas.
Yeah.
But maybe strategy should be a word that's
Well,
put in there.
I can take it back to the town team, but I think it's because it was there before. But I mean, we can't actually ask DDC for the costs, you know, for what their income is. So that would have to be a town council. But if I talk to Richard Ralph, the chair, to see if we could just come up with a plan that would lift the original plan.
That would be very helpful. And also Councillor Franklin's suggestion that there is a specific look at parking in the cattle market car park around the medical
The
practice.
entrance to the doctor's surgery is all double yellow lines, as people shouldn't be parking there anyway, and that's where the ambulances go in and park. So I think we should just look at see if we can increase our parking spaces. I think we lost about 16 with that extension.
Right. Okay, have you got all those points?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, let's just move on. The curfew bell is ringing. Where are we?
Was it me?
Oh, street furniture, yes. Councillor Shuker.
So just very quickly, so I've done the easy bit, which was enjoying walking around the town trail. I've captured all of the details on the assets along there, 97 different items. The next phase, which I will be starting shortly, is thinking about how I capture those within a spreadsheet, but also more challenging is how I assign, particularly to items like street lighting, the actual recorded reference numbers for them. A number of the street lights do not have the reference numbers on them. Some of them you can guess because they do run sequentially, not all the way sequentially, there's different sequences along the walk. I'm engaging with DDC on this, and so I'm on track at the moment. Next phase is the crunching bit.
Yes, very good. Well, thank you. And we look forward to, I mean, 97 items is a lot of street furniture.
It is.
And that's just on the town trail.
It is. From Gaze and Salts, so Strand Street, Gaze and Salts, through to the Quay. So people will argue the town trail's bigger, but that's the area that I focused on. But just very quickly, what I hope is we can identify a small number of those out of there so that we can actually renovate with DDC's agreement. They've said it's something that we can look at. So some benches desperately in need of treatment. It's within our capabilities of some of us to do that.
Yes.
Thank you. There's a lot of missing seats. You're looking where the plinths are, so that, you know, where it was been broken, a lot of the seats were memorial seats, weren't they?
Yes.
And that's quite a good idea. People find a memorial seat.
Yeah.
There is a lot of missing seats.
Yes. I'm aware that Councillor Franklin, you're looking after signage, but
On the agenda, is it?
No,
it's
I
not
didn't see
on
it.
the agenda.
I got away with it. I got away with it.
Perhaps it's because I had a meeting with the town clerk. We have had a meeting with the town clerk and the lady from Dover. So it's working out the ownership of the different sides, you know, like Kent County Council, Dover, rail track with the station and things.
Right.
So and it's so it's ongoing. So we're working with the lady from Dover, which is I think Councillor Suker put on to me, so
I did, yes.
so it's ongoing, so good, so it should be a good report.
Can I just
Mrs.
ask
George.
if the review of furniture does at all cover the forecourt? I mean, as we're still
No,
stuck not knowing whether the forecourt
No,
and whether the bus shelter will
no.
move and
It's
not
not too
move.
far
But,
for me.
right, so how do we progress that? Sorry.
It's currently in action on the Heritage and Townscape
Yeah,
action.
so
Yes.
so
Yeah,
there
we-
is
There's nothing
being
at
is
the
being
moment,
action.
Yeah.
well, certainly when I last spoke to the town clerk, she hadn't had any response from us.
Right. Okay.
Anything else that we need to talk about? I don't think there is. So the date and time of the next meeting is the 8th of April 2024 at 18:30.
I can't take a note yet because it makes a noise. I'll deal with it.